Okay, so a bit of a weird move, I would say, here just happened. A trade and a player for player trade, which almost never happens in the NFL. Let's talk about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, CJ Gardner-Johnson, going to the Texans in exchange for Kenyon Green. Now, there also are draft picks at play as the Eagles send back a sixth and the Texans send back a fifth. So the Eagles move up around in the draft as well on day three. So that is it. But it is more or less a one-for-one trade. And a curious one. So let's start with CJ Gardner-Johnson, defensive back for the Eagles, who has bounced around for a few teams. He is someone who is, I think, best known for getting under players' skins. He has that famous viral clip of that Bears player who I forget who it was, who just like punched CJ Gardner-Johnson in the face, and Gardner-Johnson had no reaction to it. But that's kind of CJ Gardner-Johnson, right? He gets under players' skin. He's also known to get take penalties himself as well. He's a defensive back, right, through and through. He started with the Saints. He then went to the Eagles, then went to the Lions, back to the Eagles, won a Super Bowl, and to be honest, had probably a career year with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's always been someone who has had a lot of inconsistencies in his game, but we saw much more of the positives than the negatives last year. If you like PFF grades, he was the 13th highest graded safety last year out of 98 eligible, so that's pretty good. You'll take that. The contract details, so I'm assuming this is part of why this move was made, as for CJ Gardner-Johnson, he actually is going to, if this contract hasn't been restructured, he's actually going to hurt the Eagles a little bit, trading him this year by about $1.7 million, but it will help in future years, as including 2027, when Gardner-Johnson won't be under contract. There's a void year that he's due to get, around $14 million. It seems like 12 of those million are now going to be the Texans are on the hook for, although none of those would be guaranteed. So that's usually how that works. Again, a lot of times there's underlying clauses, and these things don't fully work out the way it looks like it does on paper. So, to be determined exactly on how that contract will work. But ultimately, for CJ Gardner-Johnson, an effective player who isn't on a bad contract and should be an effective player for the Houston Texans. Okay, cool. Texans getting a safety. Well, who are they? What are the Eagles getting? Why did the Eagles make this move? That's a good question. Why did the Eagles make this move for Kenyon Green, who was a first-round pick? I have to assume that is part of what they're seeing in him, is maybe they like the prospect, someone who was picked 15th overall in the 2022 draft. But in 2 years, he has been, quite frankly, one of the worst guards in football. He has not been effective whatsoever. This isn't a Mekhi Becton situation where Becton had some inconsistencies and had struggled to stay on the field. This is a situation where Green just straight up has not looked like an NFL player. So he's been in the league 2 years. Maybe the third year is when things get better. You're going to a great situation for Kenyon Green. But to be honest, the only thing I could see, if I'm an Eagles fan, the only way I would really feel okay about this move is if he is purely coming in for to be a backup at this point. Becton is currently a free agent. If he's coming in to start, maybe he's coming in to be a potential starter. But again, we'll see. I'm not one to criticize the Eagles in any offensive line move that they try and make. They've been very successful at these moves, but this is definitely a situation where for Kenyon Green, if he was traded for a fifth to sixth round jump like that, I'd say, okay, I guess let's see what he has to do. So trading him for this and a safety who was very good for you last year, it's a little bit curious. Now, I wonder what they're going to do at safety, what the Eagles' plan at safety is at this point as well. I don't know if there is I have to assume this is just a contract thing. I don't know what you do at safety. Maybe you draft someone. Maybe they like someone in a later round, because you can often get good safeties in future rounds. You don't always need to draft them in the first round. Case in point, CJ Gardner-Johnson was a fourth-round pick. So, okay. I don't hate the idea of selling high on a player, right? And that's essentially what they're doing. The Eagles are selling high on a player and buying low on a player. The question is, even with that, maybe the player that you're selling high on is still going to, when he drops down, be more valuable than the player that you're buying low on, even if he gets better, right? That's just the question I have. For the Houston Texans, it is funny that they keep trading away offensive linemen, right? I mean, I think this is a good trade. I'm going to defend this trade for them, but it is funny how, okay, the Laramie Tunsil deal I just didn't like, but it is kind of funny how they've given up another offensive lineman. So in a year where they had to improve the offensive line, they've gotten rid of a couple offensive linemen. At the same time, I'm just going to be honest, so far, getting rid of Kenyon Green is going to improve the offensive line, given what he was last year or in the year prior. Again, young player, could get better, but am I banking on that? He's been in the league for 2 years. So I wouldn't just say, let's sign him or trade for him in this case and hope he gets better. Now, what could be the case instead is maybe they've scouted him. I'm sure they've scouted him if they made this trade. They scouted him heavily and they said, oh, we think we can do this to make him better. We think there are active things that we can do to make him better. Maybe that's it. Maybe there are technique things they feel like they can teach him, in which case it's not the worst thing in the world. But honestly, I think I would have rather just gotten the draft pick and drafted someone than going after someone who, again, I get it, was a good college player, although personally I was never a fan of his college tape. But, he was a player who people liked enough to consider a first-round talent. Even if 15 was a bit of a high pick at the time, he was still considered a first-round talent. I get that there is that talent there, but ultimately I'd rather someone who has played well in the NFL. So, I don't know. Bit of a curious move. I guess the Eagles just have to clear some money. They've been losing a lot of free agents and now lose a player who wasn't a free agent. But I guess for CJ Gardner-Johnson, probably never a great feeling to get traded. But when you just won a Super Bowl and you're still going to a team that should be a playoff team, I guess that makes it a little bit makes you feel a little bit better if you're CJ Gardner-Johnson. But yeah, as a whole, I mean, again, maybe you disagree in the comments below. Maybe you feel like this is going to be a good move. Eagles fans, let me know if there's something you think I'm missing, because that's possible. I don't catch everything, but on paper, don't really get this. And also, Texans secondary, already pretty good. This should help it. They could use a safety. I think that's kind of one thing they could have have and add to that roster. Adding a safety could be really helpful for them. So yeah, I mean, secondary is already good. Adding another player, okay, it makes you feel a little better if you're a Texans fan, I would think. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.